On this mission, we will learn how to land under Instrument Flight Rules, IFR, with the Dassault Mirage F1C, following the procedures of the real aircraft, adapted for DCS. Since Iraq's airbases are not equipped with ILS, we will land at Damascus International Airport, thanks to a cooperation agreement signed between the air forces of Iraq and Syria. The mission includes the following sections, some of them are optional and can be skipped. Navigate to the destination using Tacan, descent, intercept Damascus ILS beam, perform an IFR landing, taxi to ramp, and shutdown, the latter two being optional. This training series is set on the Syria map, and the approximate mission time is 15 to 30 minutes, depending on which optional parts you chose to do. Press spacebar to begin. You can adjust the sound volume produced by the background air traffic by moving the in-cockpit sound slider on the DCS options audio screen, which you can access by pressing the escape key. This instructor's volume level can be adjusted with the helmet sound slider. Also, you can press spacebar to skip long voiceovers. We have the mission paused to have time to explain the Tacan and ILS configuration. We will use Tacan to navigate towards the initial approach point for Damascus runway 05 right. Once we arrive at that point, we will perform a landing approach guided by our ILS navigation device, tuned to Damascus ILS station. From our previous mission, you already know how to set up our Tacan receptor. First, set the Tacan mode dial to TR, transmit receive, as this mode provides both bearing and distance to the station. Next, let's quickly test our Tacan receiver, by press and holding its T button. Both the red and green lights should flash, indicating a successful test. Use the highlighted knobs to select channel 32 X-ray, which is the channel that the portable Tacan station at Damascus is using. Once the Tacan begins to receive the station signal, it will illuminate its green light and the Morse identification of the station should be heard. On this mission the station is TDA. You can adjust the Tacan audio volume using the TAC knob on the audio panel. Sometimes it can take a few seconds to hear the Morse. Select either navigation mode VT, VOR and Tacan, or TT, radar and Tacan. For this mission, set it to TT. Quickly test the navigation indicator by press and holding its test button T. The Tacan bearing arrow should align with the green mark at 45 degrees and the distance window displays 250 nautical miles. On our destination airbase we will land on runway 05 right, which has a true heading of 50 degrees. As the navigation system of the Mirage F1 uses only magnetic headings, we need to check on the F10 map, where we can see that this runway has a magnetic heading of 047 degrees. So, set a desired magnetic heading of 047 degrees, using the highlighted knob. The desired heading arrowhead on the navigation indicator moves accordingly. Press spacebar once you have set the correct desired heading. At this point, the Tacan bearing arrow is pointing directly towards the Tacan station at our destination airbase, but we will use its vector mode to point towards the initial approach point instead, as shown on the diagram. So, for this approach, specify a point on bearing 47 plus 180 equals 227 degrees, and set at a 20 nautical miles distance, so that we may have a bit longer approach to allow more time for the training instructions. The highlighted outer ring allows you to control if the inner knob inputs vector distance or bearing. Using both, enter 020 for the distance counter, and 227 for the bearing. Good, now use the highlighted switch to select vector mode. Note that the Tacan bearing arrow is now pointing to a different location than before, as it now points towards the initial approach point for our landing. The Instrument Landing System, ILS, is a precision runway approach system, based on two radio beams which together provide the pilot with both vertical and horizontal guidance during an approach to land. Today, we will use ILS to land safely at Damascus, on low visibility conditions. Unlike the Tacan, which displays its directions on the navigation indicator, the ILS displays them on the spherical indicator. For that, please select VOR ILS on the VOR ILS Tacan selector. Next, turn on the ILS receiver, switching the highlighted ring to the M position, March A. Good, now select the ILS frequency of Damascus 05 runway, 111.10 MHz, using both inner knobs. We are still out of range of the ILS station, so the yellow needles on the spherical indicator are out of sight as no signal is being received. However, you can test the ILS equipment by alternately moving the highlighted outer ring momentary switch to its HG position, with a left click and hold, and to its BD position, with a right click and hold. On the HG position, the ILS needles should move down and left. On the BD position, the ILS needles should move up and right. Once you get within range of the ILS station, you will be able to hear its identification Morse code. Adjust its audio volume with the highlighted VOR knob. Good, we have completed the ILS configuration. You are now ready to resume the flight. Press spacebar to unpause the mission. Use trim to level the aircraft and adjust your throttle to maintain 350 knots indicated airspeed. You will now have to turn the aircraft to the left, towards the direction pointed by the Tacan bearing on the navigation indicator. Strive to keep your altitude constant during the turn. Good, you are now heading towards the initial approach point. Level the aircraft and head it in such a way that the Tacan bearing arrow on the navigation indicator is pointing straight up, towards the heading index. We will now contact air traffic control to report that we are inbound. The green radio should be already on, set to the VHF frequency of ATC, and the green knob should be pushed in on the audio panel. Press the / key to bring up the DCS communications menu. OK, now select F5, ATC, FN, Damascus. If Damascus is not on the ATC list, it means we are still a bit far from it. Select F12 to exit the menu. Wait a few seconds and try again. Once you are able to select Damascus, press F1, inbound. ATC should respond with the instructions to fly an approach towards its active runway, which should be runway 05. Press spacebar once ATC has responded, and press F12 to clear the communications menu. The destination airbase is at 2,000 feet above sea level. A standard landing approach descends 300 feet for every nautical mile of distance. As our initial approach point is at 20 nautical miles from the runway, you should reach that point at about 2,000 plus 20 times 300 feet, equals 8,000 feet. You should now begin a shallow descent, so that you arrive at the IAP at an altitude of 8,000 feet. Use the following parameters for the descent: reduce throttle to 7,500 RPM, indicated airspeed of 350 knots. Even though it has no effect on DCS, set the demist switch to on, to keep the windshield from fogging. If you need to decelerate, please note that the speed brake produces a pitch-up moment when extended, so, apply a bit of flight stick forward when using them, to maintain flight attitude. The distance counter on the navigation indicator shows that you are almost at the initial approach point. Flick the highlighted switch to normal, to select the Tacan station at the airbase as destination. Good, the Tacan bearing is now pointing towards the airbase. Note that the desired heading marker is almost at the same point, meaning that we are on the correct runway heading. Now make a hard turn to the left, until the Tacan bearing pointer is aligned with the top heading index of the navigation indicator. Try to keep an 8,000 feet altitude during the turn. Good, you are now almost on the correct approach path, the airbase should be visible. Maneuver to align the aircraft with the runway. Reduce speed to 250 knots indicated, throttle at 6,500 RPM, extend air brakes if required. Set the HUD to approach mode, by right-clicking on the highlighted switch. Good, next reduce the gun reticle brightness, to declutter the HUD. Wheel brakes test. Successively press and release each toe pedal. The frame light should lit on each press. Release the landing gear safety lever, in anticipation of deploying the landing gear. If ATC contacts you to clear for landing, open the communications menu and press F1, request landing. We are now at 10 nautical miles from the runway, and we have paused the flight in order to explain the use of the ILS guidance. On the spherical indicator you should by now have the ILS yellow needles active. The vertical needle, the ILS localizer, represents the runway position with respect to our aircraft. If the needle is right from center it means we are to the left of the runway axis. If the needle is to the left of center, then we are to the right of the runway. Correct your approach by heading the aircraft towards the needle. Be careful as the needle is sensitive and so it is easy to overcorrect. The horizontal needle represents the correct landing glide slope. If the needle is below center, it means our aircraft is flying above the glide slope. If the needle is above center, then we are flying below the glide slope. Correct the approach by adding power if you are below the glide slope, or reducing power if you are above it. Press spacebar to unpause and continue the mission. At 240 knots, retract the air brakes if still deployed. At 215 knots, deploy full flaps. Now, deploy the landing gear and confirm it locks, with 3 green lights. Turn on the landing light by right-clicking on it, switch twice. At 160 knots, increase RPM to 7,300 and trim the aircraft to attain a 10-degree incidence. Its indicator should be green. You may want to raise your seat to improve visibility at high incidence angles. Maintain 150 knots until final approach, RPM at 7,300 and incidence at 10 degrees. Place the HUD's orange dot, the velocity vector, over the runway threshold and keep it there. On finals, do not reduce RPM below 7,000 to maintain good engine response. Velocity vector on runway threshold, the angle of attack should be between 9 to 11 degrees, RPM should be 7,300.
Uzi 1-1, request landing.
When reaching the overrun, pull out of glide slope to flare by increasing the angle of attack from 10 to about 13 degrees. Reduce engine RPM to 7,000 just before touchdown. Touchdown, fully close the throttle. Brake chute. Deploy immediately after touchdown, bringing its control lever fully aft. Apply wheel brakes to help reduce the aircraft's speed. The nose wheel steering system is available as soon as the nose wheel touches the ground. Depress its button to enable high sensitivity mode. Drop the brake chute while rolling straight on the edge of the runway by pushing its lever fully forward. Good, the brake chute has been released. It will be picked up by ground crew. Take the first available exit to the left to taxi towards the ramp, as shown on the diagram. The taxi to ramp and aircraft shutdown are optional, please select. Press spacebar to end the mission at this point. Press backspace if you want to continue the taxi towards the ramp. Good, now you have to taxi towards the west ramp, where your ground crew is waiting for you. On the next intersection, turn the aircraft to the left. Taxi at no more than 20 knots. While taxiing, perform the following runway clearing procedure steps. On the left console, landing light, set to its middle position, taxi. Slats and flaps. Retract by moving the highlighted lever forward. High lift devices switch, turn off. On the right console, demist switch, set to off. IFF, set to off. VOR, turn to off. Tacan, set to off. Radar, set to standby. Pitot heat, turn off. Radar warning receiver, turn off. Warning horn switch, turn off. Good, this completes the runway clearing procedure. Continue the taxi towards the ramp. On the next intersection, turn to the right and proceed straight to the ramp. You are now almost at your ramp spot, your ground crew is waiting for you. Upon entering the ramp, proceed towards the hangar at the back, then turn sharply to the right and then to the right again. to park the aircraft on the proper spot, as shown on the figure. Good, you are now parked at the correct spot and heading. The aircraft shutdown is optional, please select. Press spacebar to end the mission at this point. Press backspace if you want to perform the aircraft shutdown. Parking brake. Pull its handle to set the brake. With idle RPM stabilized, perform the following steps. Air conditioning, turn off. Armament control panel, push buttons released. Gyroscope reference system, set to off. Emergency gyromagnetic compass, turn off. Radar, set to off. Sight, turn off. Searchlight, turn off. EL pump, turn off. Standby horizon, turn to off. Navigation indicator, set to off. Standby horizon. Caged. Undercarriage control lever safety, in place. Throttle. Move to its stop position by first moving it back to its minimum position, and then either click on the highlighted switch, or press the I key. Wait for the engine to stop rotating. Low pressure fuel pumps, all three. Set to off. Battery and night lighting. Set all to off. Canopy, open. First, click on its lock lever. Next, click on either handle to fully open the canopy. Congratulations, you have completed this training mission by landing your aircraft using ILS, taxiing to ramp and performing a proper shutdown. Well done. Press spacebar to exit the mission.